Thrilled to discuss the football situation at Azusa Pacific with a man who covers Southern California high school football recruiting and at the collegiate level better than anyone. It's Montell Allen. The guy has his pulse on everything, and he promotes these kids because he wants to see them go to high school and then succeed and play collegiate football. And I'm excited to have a discussion with him as it relates to Azusa Pacific deciding to put an end to their football program. I'm Bryan Fenley. I'm with Fox Sports Radio. Montell has a great website that I encourage everybody to check out, mbasports.net. He is on Twitter at mbasports1. Follow him there. The guy has the pulse, as I said, on everything as it relates to high school football recruiting news and supporting these athletes. He's also a founder of Straight from the Horse Mouth Zoom calls. You can find him on Fox Sports Prep Football Analysis, and the co-founder. One of the things that I've seen him do and know he is very reputable with is the SDFNL All-Star Game, and of course founder as well of the San Diego Kickoff Classic. Montell, first of all, you're a busy guy. I really appreciate you coming on, and certainly a hot topic issue right now is with what's taken place in the last 9 to 10 months with coronavirus. It's certainly had a strain on collegiate athletic institutions as far as what they can do with their finances. And one unfortunate situation that you know a lot about is what took place at Azusa Pacific. You know a lot of kids that were on that team, and last month they decided that after 55 years that they were going to put an end to the program. Is this something, Montell, that you feel could have been avoided?
Yes, I do. I believe. Let me take that back. I can't understand or have an understanding of what Azusa's financial situation is. But as far as the football program, I think it could have been avoided. I think athletic departments have been, and pardon my French, but lazy about figuring out ways how to be able to keep this program, keep football programs, and that's not only just Azusa Pacific. I think across the board. I believe that these schools, these institutions, should be figuring out ways how to keep these programs instead of letting them go. My opinion, I believe Azusa Pacific could have just kind of delayed it and said, we're going to suspend it for football for 2021 and 2022 and bring it back 2023 while they figure out a platform how to financially make it work for the institution. I believe a lot of schools, that's the easy way. That's the best way to go ahead and cut costs right away in the athletic department because football is the most expensive. But it's also the biggest mechanism that draws a lot of diversity to the school, especially male diversity. So they're cutting off the mechanism that draws male diversity to the school, by and large the biggest component of it all. And then with successful football program, it draws enrollment, it drives everything up. So you're cutting off that big portion of a driving mechanism for diversity within the universities, especially for Black and brown males. So I think they just kind of became lazy with the process. I know they look at other alternatives, how to make it happen. And I know Azusa was really in a bad bind because they were the only Division II in California. So everything they had to do was go out of state. They had to fly everywhere. So I believe that's a huge expense. But I believe they took maybe 1 or 2 years, figure out another pattern, kind of like University of San Diego has done with being non-scholarship, and figure out a way to keep that mechanism going. Division II football will be still a post and still alive in California.
Yeah, I feel like, and Montell Allen is joining us, I'm Bryan Fenley, that coronavirus has been looked upon as something that hastens and speeds up perhaps some challenges when it comes to balancing the budget. Like if you were before the pandemic, if you were trying to make it work, and then when this came in, it makes it a little bit more out there and to see as far as like what really is going on. But like you said, I'm with you as far as ways in which this could have been avoided. And you have been developing so many relationships with these athletes, from following them, going to Azusa Pacific and documenting and chronicling their careers in high school. How have you seen the effect that this has had on them and the fallout, and just how challenging it is on their end stomaching this news?
I mean, you got to think for any level of kid. I mean, Southern California, as far as football concerned at the collegiate level, is at a dire need as far as that middle tier. You have Division I, obviously, which is the big guys, the Mountain West and the Pac-12. Then you come to the Division I AA's, which are Sac State, UC Davis, Cal Poly, and USD. and then it's Division III, which we know, and I kind of take us through, and we have no Division II now and no NAIA. So that middle tier is pretty much gone for us to have for our kids at football. So the impact on them is they lose their support mechanism because they have to leave out of state. So your natural support system, especially from a kid from the inner city who's never left this town or never left this area or just is only a couple hours away, the one family support system that he had is now gone because now he has to leave as far as Colorado. So he's states away now. So that's the first part. That's the first avenue. You lose kind of the friendship you have close to home. You're in a whole different state. You have to learn a whole new culture, a whole new identity where you're at right now. And you lose all that by leaving the state of California to play. That's hard for any 17, 18-year-old man to kind of muster it up and get themselves together. Now, people say the alternative is junior college. Great alternative, but I mean, why should that be the only alternative for our children to be able to go to? It should have that middle tier because, as we know, everyone hasn't developed into that Division I player. Sometimes a lot of kids are late bloomers. Not say they don't have the talent, they don't meet the physical attributes just yet, and they can have that time and that way to develop it at the Division II level and still play competitive football, still go to school, still get the degree, still learn time management, still become a productive citizen of the community, still give back, still open new businesses, and so on and so on. But we cut that whole mechanism out. And I believe that they cut that whole mechanism out definitely for, like I said, diversity, men of color. If you look at any roster across the board, across the country, predominantly it's African-American, Polynesian, Latino, so on and so on. I would say at least 70 to 80%, most rosters. So we picked that mechanism from these 12 Division II schools that we had, and now that's gone. That's a whole entire workforce over the last 25 years that could have worked in companies within California and so on that is absolutely demolished now.
Why have we come to this point where there is only one Division II school in California? I know that some schools in the last, 20 to 30 years, I think I saw a stat that it was more than 10 schools since then have decided to terminate their program. But how did it come to this point, Montell? Why is it that, and I read for Azusa Pacific's football team last year, every single one of their road games, they had to fly, which had to have been tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I think they said it was $42,000 every time they had to go on a road game. So that's just, they could play 5 games. It was basically $250,000 for them to go out. But let's not forget, if they took a Division I game or a Division AA, it's a money game, so they make money off of that. So it's not all an expense. I believe how we got to this point is that they started looking at football as an expense and started looking at it as an investment in the student athletes. There's the deceptive part of it. This is an investment in student athletes. This is the mechanism that attracts your biggest diversity culture on your campus. It's an investment. It's not an expense, and they've been looking at it as an expense forever. And that's where we draw the line of the problem is, because when it's an expense, everyone wants to cut expense.
Yeah.
Always. People always want to invest. There's a difference. When you say invest, you want to put more money into it. You want to put more things in it to make it grow. You want to make sure it's successful. But when you look at expense, it's always your first natural thought is, let me cut it off. Let me cut it. So that's where they're starting to put it. It goes into the expense report instead of the investment report. And I don't know why football has gotten a bad rap within that. And I don't know how come state, and I'll take a step back. I think Jackson State with Deion Sanders has done the best thing in the world because they've invested in the football program. And let's be perfectly clear. Money's not in the football program. They make money from it, but that's not the big money. The money is in enrollment. And the more you make your school more popular, the more you get your school's name out there, the more popular, the more enrollment you're going to get. What Jackson State has done, I call it the switcheroo. If you talk to anybody outside on the West Coast, if you say, mention an HBCU or a historical Black college, the first thing that comes to mind is Grambling. You know why Grambling comes to mind? Because George Robinson, Mr. Robinson was an iconic coach. They won football games. Their name spread it out. Well, now, when you say HBCU on the West Coast now, it's Jackson State and Grambling. So they've already doubled their population or their popularity for kids that they're interested in going to HBCU. Jackson State will now be considered in a conversation because now you get more money from enrollment and out-of-state enrollment. Same thing with Division II football. If you put an investment and you invest in your football team, you're going to get a lot more minorities on campus. You're going to get a lot more investment. That means brothers, sisters, cousins, friends are going to want to go to that school and increase your enrollment, not decrease it. And every school that's lost their football team, you can look historically across the board from Humboldt State to Chico State Sonoma State, San Francisco State, Cal State East Bay, which was Cal State Hayward before, Santa Clara, all those schools. Male enrollment and male enrollment of color has dipped drastically. So they're not investing. And I don't know, I'm not sure where the break is. I'm going to be perfectly blunt on this conversation. They're not investing in minority males. I think they're cutting that void out. And I'm not understanding why, because if you go to any corporate America, especially Fortune 5 companies, the first thing you would say, well, how come you're not hiring enough men of color? They would always say they're not qualified because they can't find anyone with a degree. Well, you're cutting off the mechanism that attracts these young men to schools.
The meetings that took place at Azusa when they were deciding upon this. Now, I read the release, Montell, and it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are no other sports that are going to be terminated within the athletic scheme of the program of Azusa Pacific, that it's only football affected, which is interesting because usually, you would see, if it's that big of a deal, other sports as well that are being penalized or being taken away. So I found that very interesting that it was just football. And I'm grateful that you brought up the dynamic with Jackson State, because I know a guy on the team, and you might have seen this, but I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, Aubrey Miller, and he transferred from Missouri to Jackson State. And when I asked him why he did it, you pointed it out. We're building something special here. Deion Sanders gives us hope. He has connections. It's not just about, he's going to help me get to the NFL, but he's going to help me get that degree. He's going to help set my future up in a good way and take me out, in Aubrey's case, of a situation with it. He'd been open about that. It was hard for him growing up. And so he looks for those role models in his life, and he's able to make that happen by going to Jackson State. And a lot of other Division I transfers are going to Jackson State. You had guys from all over the place, former 4-star guys flooding in there. So it's very exciting to see what Deion's doing at Jackson State. And now you deal with these kids at Azusa who are trying to find out, do they still want to play? Do they still want to go to the school? Can they still keep their scholarship even though the football program is no longer operational? So what would your advice be to those players who still have that thirst for football, and now they have to find out where they're going to channel that into?
I think now they're in a hard place, because now with the transfer portal obviously open for all the divisions, and you don't have to sit out a year. So that's one mechanism where people are going to pull from. Them losing their program now put all those people in displacement. As far as if they want to play again, I believe they're going to honor the scholarships. The guys that are on scholarship, they're going to honor it, which they should. They absolutely should. But I believe the guys that still want to go play football, they have to go find another home and find a coach that's going to be interested in them. Find all these different things that wants them to play, if they have the right position, and so on and so on. They just have to go through the whole entire recruiting process they went through high school all over again, which we all know that's a stressful situation for anyone. Will they find homes? I believe all of them will, because they played at the collegiate level. So it's going to vary. But will some go up to Division I? Some play still at Division II. Some play Division III. It's going to be where they can find a home. I don't even think the level matters as much as where's there an opening for them to play. I mean, that's for all the kids in California, all the 2021 class. People are trying to figure out a place where they can go play, because there's not many options with COVID, and with the situation the NCAA gave all those teams another option to come back for another year. Now you have the transfer portal running rapid. Now you have the class of 2021. Some states played, some didn't. Now you have a school like Azusa closing down. They get thrown in the mix as well. So it's so much supply, it's so much supply that it overwhelms the demand, if that makes sense for you. So if we're looking at the curve, it's like almost like this. The supply is big and the demand is only down here. They can only take so many people with scholarships. So it's hard, and especially just hard on kids in California. I mean, you got to imagine, if you had that Division II mechanism with 10 schools, each school holds 120 spots. Wow, we don't have that worry anymore. Our kids that are in California can go to other California schools and play. And if it's at the state school level, which we know every state university gets paid based on enrollment. Mm-hmm. So you just got 120 more male enrollees in your program by just having football instead of cutting that enrollment. I don't know what the private school way is, because Azusa was a private school. I'm not sure if they get paid for enrollment, how they work it, but I know for a fact Humboldt, Chico, San Francisco State, Cal State East Bay, and so on and so on. They get paid based on their enrollment. They get funding from the state based on their enrollment. So why would you cut out 120 people that's going to be at your school guaranteed every year to play? And I believe they can have football non-scholarship. They can take the same cookie cutter that University of San Diego does, which is a non-scholarship Division I AA program, apply to these schools, and you would have kids flocking to them because they don't want to leave out of state to go play. They'd rather stay at home and be able to play in front of their families and friends and have that support mechanism and be successful in graduating. It seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't understand what the problem is. And also, if you keep it non-scholarship, it doesn't affect the Title IX. It doesn't get into the battle of Title IX issues. So we don't have to have a scholarship for every male, for every female. If you have a non-scholarship, you don't have to worry about that. Let's get at least the programs off the ground doing that. And then let's venture into the next 5 years, have a plan collectively as a whole organization. How do we start to make a scholarship?
What sort of long-term damage do you think that this can have on a university like Azusa Pacific, who you said looks at this more from a numbers and sense, that they don't look at it from a human perspective? It's more about expense than it is investing. But as you had pointed out, other schools that decided to put an end to their football programs have been dealing with some sort of remorse. And how do you feel like a school like Azusa one day could go back and say, gosh, we really, really regret this?
I think every school that lost it, I think they just got to go ask the Sonoma States and the Chicos and the San Francisco States and ask them, do they regret it? And, I think ADs will have pride and say, no, we don't regret it. But from a campus standpoint and diversity standpoint, and having men of color, and we want to preach diversity across the board, especially in the state of California for everyone. I think they'll all regret it. I think Long Beach State is regretted from dropping their program from a long time ago. And that was at the Division I level. I believe, like I said, they look at it as an expense instead of an investment. So, Bryan, I got a question for you. So, you gotta think, if I was to tell you you're an employer and I said, you know what, I can make sure I give you 8 to 10 strong candidates that will know how to do teamwork, know how to be leaders, how to be captain, how to time manage, how to be able to work under stressful situations, and I can give you these type of employees every year for your company to intern and be a part of every year. And on top of it, there will be men of color. They'll be diverse of all different kind of races. Would that be something, if you're a company, would you be interested in?
Bring them.
Exactly.
That's not even a question.
So with that being said, football develops all those attributes and those traits when you're playing, and we know a lot of kids would love to play at the Division II level and be able to be competitive and do the sport they love while they're getting those degrees. They would obtain all those attributes going into their career. Why would you cut a program off like that? We don't cut off other programs like that. State actually funds programs like that to develop those things for other people. Why wouldn't we have those programs funded within the state institution as well as private schools? Why would St. Mary's cut their program? They have more than enough money with their basketball team being so successful. Why would Santa Clara not bring the program back? Why would Azusa cut their program? They're looking at it from a different lens, as an expense lens instead of an investment lens. And I think that state of mind at some point needs to change, because if not, we're going to lose a dynamic of a lot of young men, especially inner city men, that, let's be perfectly honest, won't have a chance to get out because they have no other opportunities. You got to think of a young man from the South Central LA. You're going to tell him to go somewhere in the middle of Nebraska, and he has no idea what's going on, no support system to kind of get him through the rough spots. 9 times out of 10, or I would say at least 7 out of 10, they're probably going to come back home. Not because he can't handle it, it's just the frustration. It's a hard adjustment. It's a hard adjustment for an affluent kid that's rich to go into those areas and get adjusted and make it happen. It's going to be very hard for a person that doesn't have a lot of money to go there and get adjusted and be able to be successful. That's why there's such a hard comeback rate. So I believe all those schools are going to regret it, and I think they can start by asking those schools and see what the grand damage has been done over these last 10 to 15 years.
With 2020 and so much awareness and attention being put upon racial injustice, and a lot of it is stuff that some people, I don't know, I don't want to speak for anybody, but they look at it as, I didn't realize that is injustice, or I didn't even think of it that way, but yeah, it actually makes sense, So do you think that it's sort of just short-sighted on their end, on Azusa's end, where they just didn't see that side of it that you're seeing? Because maybe if they did and they understood, in 2020, how much awareness and attention is being put upon racial equality and all the things that have happened in this country, that if that was pushed further and they had somebody to help hold those trustees or whoever is in charge of making those decisions on that board accountable, that they would have been a little bit more unlikely to do and pull the plug on this program?
Yeah, I do. I think if they would have looked at it from a different lens, I believe they would have kind of hopefully made some adjustments and kind of made a better understanding about what this, how magnified this decision would be to cut their program. But again, when you hear expense and when you hear expense at that magnitude, as far as such money they have to save, the natural instinct is we got to start cutting. We have to start cutting. And I get it. I get it. That's a financial that's a financial thing. But you can't just deal with finance when you're dealing with people and you're investing in people. I think there's a different dynamic there. I think they fail to realize the investment they have in these young men that are going to go out there and be successful and have jobs and give back to the alumni and give back money, in the long run. Yeah, it's a short term, it's a hard expense, especially with COVID. I get it. It's going to be hard to get through it. But I figured that they should have figured out a way to weave through it and be able to have a bigger plan. I think the bigger plan should have been like, you know what, we're going to have to spend this money to go travel and play football. In the meantime, why don't we start a coalition to bring back Division II football in California and figure it out? So now we don't have to go out there so much. We don't have to spend $42,000. We can make ourselves a bus league. Let's help Cal State San Marcos start a program. Let's go help Cal State Merced bring a program. Let's help UC Riverside bring a program. So I think instead of just being selfish and being the only Division II, which they got happy with them being in that lane, we're the only Division II, so we can kind of maneuver it and the expense part caught up to them. I think if they would have said, you know what, let's build around us, let's help bring other programs about. Now that expense of $42,000 now is down to $12,000 a year because now we can bus to every team in the state of California and play them on Friday and play them on Saturdays. So I don't think no one thought long term. They thought just short term, we're an immediate expense. We got to cut it. We got to get rid of things. The easiest thing was cut football because if we cut football, we don't have to worry about it. I kind of understand that. But again, like you said, there's no vision on the long term effects they're going to have from this. And I don't think any of the programs, like I said, any of those programs drop Division II football. They never figured in the long term effects it's going to have on these young men in our community because we're cutting off outlets. We're really cutting off outlets and options for them to be able to get that post high school degree and be able to be contributors to our community, effective contributors to our community.
Let's go in that direction because the mental health of an athlete is super important. And I just don't think a lot of the mainstream media takes into account the importance of it. And again, we want everything to be done safely. We want the proper precautions put in place as far as making sure, you do as much as you can to avoid spreading coronavirus. But I never thought Montell, and Montell Allen is joining us. Follow him on Twitter at NBA Sports One. That's NBA Sports One. That the mainstream media really took the side or even understood or had empathy for the athlete. Because like you saw, even at the Division I level, Justin Fields, he wanted to play. Ohio State wanted to play. And look, they're in the national championship game now. These kids want to play. And of any college athlete I've talked about, mental health and the inability to pour themselves into what they love is devastating. And so have you seen the effects of some of these moves, whether it's a high school team not being able to play or what's going on with Azusa Pacific, where it's a side of the story that we're not giving enough attention to, and that is the mental health of these athletes, and it needs to be publicized more because it doesn't go into the equation as much when it comes to decisions.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to speak for the state of California. I can speak across the country, but definitely for the state of California. I don't believe even playing. I believe that the indecisiveness for making a decision has really hurt us. I think if Gavin Newsom or Governor Newsom would have just been like, no, when they're having football, people would have made adjustments and figured it out and be able to go their own way as far as the high school student is concerned. I believe, but this, we're going to push it out. We're going to push it out. And you're giving that last bit of hope, and the pandemic is growing and growing. That's the part where I think people are really having a problem with the indecisiveness of what's going to happen. Now, for college players that didn't get the opportunity to play, it's a little bit different mechanism because you still get your year eligibility back. You're still going to have that back again. You still can play again. High schools don't have another. You don't get another senior year back.
Yeah.
You only get one. So those seniors, class of 2021, I feel bad. I do believe it's taking a mental issue on them being restricted to play. But I also believe just having the indecisiveness is what's killing them more. That's the part that, like, hey, we're going to play. No, we're not playing. We're going to play. No, we're not going to play. So you as a senior don't understand. You're still in that limbo land and not understanding the play. So I think that's caused a big effect. I believe, the confinement stuff has been an effect. You have to be at school, you can be at home. Those things have kind of have an effect. But to me, to be perfectly honest with you, if you're a student athlete, there's no excuse. You got to kind of take care of everything you need to take care of to get yourself motivated and mentally prepared and physically prepared. We all can't have the ideal situation, to be in order to play. I know those guys in the Power 5 schools, there's a different mechanism with them. So they got the money to be able to be tested. They have the money like San Jose State. They have the money to go travel to Humboldt all the way to stay in Las Vegas for a couple of days in order just to make sure that program gets off the ground. They were fortunate to do that. Places like Cal Poly and Sac State and UC Davis have suspended their system. I think those kids are a little bit affected, but again, they still have their scholarship. They just have one more year to get ready. They get to redo their senior year, or they get another year eligibility. So I think that'll be perfectly fine once football goes up and running. I really do feel bad for the mental state of high school students, especially the class of 2021. A lot of people thought they were going to get their senior film, be able to go out there and get recruited, be able to do all these different things that kind of normally happens every year. But I hate to say it, this is changing of the guard. Recruiting will never be the same again now that we had COVID. Things will always be different. NCAA and everything, given that extra year, everything's always going to be pushed down and backlogged. California kids didn't have a year of football, so not only do seniors don't have film and get out, it's going to be a hard time for some juniors. They usually need that junior film to start to attract college scouts to get their film and get it on out. So we're in a real difficult situation as far as that and the mental state, because now everybody's in the unknown. And I don't blame Governor Newsom. He doesn't know either. No one knows how to react to this. This is something new to everyone. And I know everyone wants to bash and get on everybody and say, it's this fault, that fault. But let's be honest, man, if you don't know Chinese arithmetic, you don't know it. You got to try to figure it out. Go step by step to make a sound decision. And I just don't think, I think that they kind of dropped the ball on giving high school students that indecisive kind of part of that. I think that's more mentally damaging than anything. Because if they would told us earlier, back in September, that there was no going to be no football, there would have been an alternative in place like club football, like they're kind of starting up now. And if they would have said, yeah, we're going to have it, we should have stuck to it then and just let us have it and let the things kind of just play out the way they're going to play out. Have stop at that particular time. Yeah. But those are the kind of things I see mentally kind of going wrong. But I think the home studying with kids in school, especially for high school, I think it's just been a real difficult transition for some of them. But again, if you're a student athlete, you got to overcome it. I mean, we can make all the excuses in the world for you, but at the collegiate level, you're going to be doing the same thing. You're taught to be independent. You have to learn how to do time management. You have to learn to go to class or log on to class. You have to learn to turn in your work. So to me, in my family, we took it more as a challenge with my son. This is what it's going to be like for college. So you got to either be prepared or not. Figure out how to get stuff done within this time frame and be able to turn your work in, talk to teachers virtually, do all the things, because this is just going to prepare you that much better when you get to the next level at college level.
Montell Allen, speaking the truth, amazing words from him. No one knows the high school football recruiting scene in Southern California as well as him. Go check out his website, mbasports.net. My final question for you, Montell, and I'm Bryan Fenley, and I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley, is, well, first of all, my heart hurts for the term you use, late bloomer. So let's say you have that senior year and you are using that as like serious ammunition to take the tape and to say, hey, I'm ready for a Power 5 or I'm ready for the D1 level. And so many of those guys that are ready to make that leap are not able to show their skill set because of this whole pause when it comes to high school football in California. But what is your message to those kids? because every day it's, are we going to play? Are we not going to play? Is my senior year going to be just at home all year? And it was nothing that I ever pictured growing up. I was supposed to have, the prom and all of the social aspect as well. So when you talk to football players to kind of better their mood or to tell them that there is hope, what will you say to them as some of them are reeling from their inability to and understandably so, be patient and learn when they can actually get on the field again?
Brian, that's an excellent question. Excellent question. I am I'm an open book. I'm very transparent. Good, bad, or ugly. I'm very transparent. And one of the things I've kind of done to kind of address that issue is my straight from the horse's mouth Zoom calls. Basically, I get a coach on the line. He talks about the recruiting climate as it is today, how it affects the kids of today, how it impacts kids now, how to manage yourself, how to market yourself, how to do all these things, not from my perspective, not from the parents' perspective, not from a cousin or a coach's perspective on high school level, but from an actual person that's in the coaching fraternity of college coaches that tells them directly what they should need to do. Because I feel if you can hear straight from the horse's mouth, if you can hear from a Division I coach or a D2 coach or a D3 coach, and he's telling you these are the things you have to do in order to market yourself, promote yourself, get yourself to get recruited, then I'm cutting out that middleman and all that uncertainty. You're going to hear directly from a coach. So that call kind of helps that. Me and myself, when I talk to kids about it, I tell them the straight truth. Hey, you got to be able to figure out a way to manage through this. I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I know you don't have all the resources you're used to having, but somehow you got to figure out to make it work. That term, you got to make, lemons out, you got to turn lemons and lemonade. You got to figure it out. You got to figure it out and make the best situation for yourself. And then also you got to look at yourself at options. If you're that kid that's a Division I player, you thought you're a Division I player, and that opportunity is not coming to you, you need to go look at Division I AA. If that decision is not coming, look at Division II, because the most important message I can give a football player: if you're not playing on Saturday, you'll never have the opportunity to play on Sunday. Period. It never will happen. If you can't play on Saturday, you won't play on Sunday. So they have to look at the best opportunity for themselves, whether it's NAI or not. If you're that good of a player and you go to NAI, trust me, the NFL or those other professional leagues will fire you. But you got to get into a situation where you're going to fit in and where they want to invest in you as a student athlete and give you money to go to that school and get that degree. I think the end game needs to be the degree, not so much professional sports, because we know that's a long shot. But they can coexist with each other. You can be that person that gets that degree and play professional sports. But you got to get yourself in a school that really wants to invest in you, really wants to help you develop as a student athlete, and then you'll blossom to that player that you're supposed to be. Division I's aren't for everybody, just like Division III's aren't for everybody. But I believe there's a place for everyone to play if they find the right school that meets their criteria, that they can go ahead and excel in that. So I'm completely transparent. I have a phone call that's completely transparent. I preach transparency from coaches to student athletes to everyone that's talking to student athletes. Let's just be honest with kids and be straightforward so they can digest it, adjust, and move on. I think that's the best advice I can give someone. I think if you hold them to this limbo land, that's where the frustration, the anxiety, and all these things start to take place. If they don't know what they just don't have the aptitude to move on just yet. They don't understand that process yet. Where I think if you're straightforward with them, they'll figure it out. I think they're very resilient. All these young people are very resilient. They'll figure out a way to keep it moving. So I think that's the best answer. Let's pull it all out. Let's go put it on the table. Let's figure it out.
So well said. He is revered for his diligence in covering sports in Southern California, but he's also widely respected for how much he supports the kids and promotes them. And as you can tell by the way he talks and the tone, he wants them to succeed. I can just feel it. You don't just cover these kids, man. You want to help push them forward. And that's what makes you special and makes what you do so important. MBAsports.net. That is MBAsports.net is his website. MBA Sports One Twitter account. Follow Montell Allen there. I'm Bryan Fenley. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Montell, I love this conversation with you. Let's do this again, because I know there will be things that will pop up that will be cause for conversation. And certainly sometimes the discussion isn't easy to talk about. And I feel the pain for these Azusa Pacific football players. And I just hope, and I know with so much of what you're doing, you're comforting them and helping give them some direction in a time right now where we could all honestly use some direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope to be able to provide, be able a launching pad for them to assist them in finding another school, but also I hope this is a launching pad to spark people that want to bring Division II football back. I mean, I think it's important. I mean, it's not an expensive, it's more of an investment in our young people and our young men to be able to have that outlet to attract them to these schools, be successful in these schools and graduate from these schools, and then be able to move on with their careers, whether it's in the sports field or any other field they choose. But I believe football is that number one mechanism that drives these young men to these universities, and it drives enrollment. And football is the number one money maker for these schools. So, I mean, I'm all for it. I hope this is one of many speeches that we can have, and one of many conversations we can have to be able to drive that mechanism and hopefully catch someone's ear to be able to help push the lever to go forward.